Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first program in the Fresh Report, a broadcast by Fresh Justice, the Foundation for Racial, Economic, Social, and Historical Justice, Inc. We're a new nonprofit that's committed to bringing you information and to holding government accountable in every respect, accountable for all our rights, accountable for the tax dollars that we pay. And in New Jersey, some of the highest tax dollars in the United States. With me today are some wonderful friends and community activists who are here to help us shed some light on what's happening in Bergen County, in Newark, and in New Jersey, as it concerns lead, as it concerns clean water, and as it concerns government accountability. But first, I'm going to let our guests introduce themselves. Starting at the far left, we have Carol Bratman. Carol, please tell us about some of the work you've done and your particular interest in clean water issues and lead in particular.
Okay. I'm Carol Bratman, and I am a 46-year-old, no, that's wishful thinking, a 46-year-long resident of Teaneck, New Jersey. Now, Teaneck is one of the cities in New Jersey that has 35 toxic waste sites. New Jersey happens to have the most toxic waste sites of any state in the whole country. I'm here because of a personal story. Two of my two daughters were diagnosed with cancer within 6 weeks of each other. This was going back 3 years. And there was no biological cause in terms of genetic factors. So I did a little research, and I met Jermaine at a meeting of the Sierra Club when he gave me a postcard with information about toxins in the water. It got me thinking about other factors that could have caused my daughter's illnesses. And in doing the research, I did find that there were toxins in my water. I had it tested, and not just lead, other toxins as well, which I'll mention later. And so I have been doing this research and trying to spread the word amongst the population and whoever I speak to please have your water tested. Don't trust the companies that provide the water, because right here I have a Suez pamphlet from 2017 that promises that we will receive water that meets the federal and state quality regulations. Well, that's obviously not the case, and certainly not from my tap water that I had tested, and you will hear more about the Newark situation as well. So I'm here as a private advocate trying to spread the word that clean water matters. When it affects your family and it affects your loved ones, it matters a lot. And everyone should be aware that they can't trust what companies say and what the state as well tells us.
Thank you. Wynnie, do you want to tell us about some of your work and how in particular you have an interest in lead and clean water, particular in your area where you live and do most of your work?
Okay, sure. My name is Winifred Victor Hinds, and I am co-chair of the Newark Environmental Commission. I am also on the New Jersey and the national boards of Clean Water Action, and I am also a community engagement and outreach manager for NJDEP, which stands for Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions. Now, my story is similar to Carol's. Even though I've worked with environmental issues and I've worked with environmental organizations at a grassroots level and then also at a higher level, I am also a resident of Newark. And so in terms of the issue with the water, when my husband and I, when we moved to Newark, we erred on the side of caution. I mean, through experience of having lived in different places where I've encountered water issues. So I went and I got a point of entry water filter, and then also a point of use, which is at the faucet water filter. So in back of my mind, being that Newark is an older city, I always thought that maybe there might be some issue with the water. And so I've always taken it upon myself to try to educate people about the water. And so my struggle with the water goes back to in Newark, actually, around, I would say, 2009, with the Booker administration when they tried to privatize the water or franchise the water. And so we formed the Newark Water Group, and we stopped him from privatizing the water. And, I can talk about that later, but right now, our main issue is trying to make sure that, the water in Newark improves. And so the current mayor has taken some steps, and the administration also has taken some steps. But, there are also some other issues, and we can talk about that later.
Yeah. And certainly what I'm picking up from both of you is what we started with, accountability. And whether we can trust the persons who we expect to trust, the persons who have the responsibility to either provide us with a public utility, that is, clean water, or to monitor it and to ensure that whoever is providing it is complying with government standards, best practices, proper health standards, at the very least giving us safe, potable water that our kids can drink, that we can drink, that we can cook with, that we can bathe in, that we can use. And what I'm hearing from both of you, which I want to zero a little bit more on, is who can we trust and why can we not trust them? And how can we hold them accountable? Now, Carl, something you said struck me because I'm glad you did your own testing. Fresh Justice has been doing its own testing also. But more importantly, we reached out to the New Jersey DEP for information, which most of us, we're not getting information, right? And if we don't make a special effort to do Oprah requests or FOIA requests, we will never know what's sitting in a government office or a Suez office or a private office buried under files not being released to the public. When we reached out to the New Jersey DEP, what did we find? That Suez has been in breach. How long have they been in breach? We don't know because we got only 1 year's worth of testing results. And what those testing results showed was that Suez was supplying water to Teaneck,
Yes.
to other areas in Bergen County, including Hackensack, which exceeded EPA levels. I'm going to stop here and say something about EPA levels, and please jump in, because the levels are artificial, right?
15 parts per billion.
15 parts per billion, but we know at some point, the action level, then at some stages somebody says, okay, when you're going into schools, let's make it 10 parts per billion. And then we all know of Dr. Mona Hanna-Attisha, who was the person who blew the lid on Flint, Michigan. And she believes, and I trust her, because she's the one who highlighted what happened in Flint. And she says no level of lead is safe.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But what we do know for sure is that in Bergen County, action levels were exceeded. And Suez knew this and did not properly monitor, did not take required action steps that are mandated by the so-called regulatory agencies to correct this. Now, of course, we can get into a lot of debate about that kind of monitoring and the action steps that need to be taken and whether they're effective, because I don't believe they are, right? But at the very least, it should be done. At the very least, if the levels of lead in the water you're supplying to me are exceeding the very artificial levels, the little bone that the EPA threw to us, the citizens, at least meet that bone. Throw us that bone. Suez did not take steps, and what we don't know for sure is how the New Jersey DEP held them to account. Let me hear you both comment on that.
Well, it's not just that they didn't take steps, but here in Teaneck there are many pipes bringing the water from the reservoir to the streets. They had to have known that these pipes were old and made of lead. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to know that lead in water is really not very good for your health. So that not only didn't the DEP take the proper steps, but Suez could have informed us sooner. I received, now this is, as I said, a Suez pamphlet from 2017. I received a letter from Suez in March of 2019 saying, guess what? There may be lead in your water. This is absolutely reprehensible. They should have told us sooner. They also said, we've been replacing lead pipes for several years now. Well, again, why are you telling me in 2019 when this has been going on for years? And why has it taken so long? Now, they did say that you could call them and they would test your water, and they would also let you know if your pipe was lead. I had already done that on my own by then, and found out that they have a connector pipe. So even though the main pipe to my house was not lead, there was a connector 18-inch pipe made of lead. They will not be replacing this until all the other lead pipes in the town have been replaced at a rate of only 7% a year. This is going to take a minimum of 14 to 15 years then to replace all of the pipes that have lead in Teaneck, which means that I am going to have to wait more than 15 years, if I'm even around, to see that my lead pipe connector has been replaced. This is just not acceptable, not in America and not in a country that supposedly has the resources to provide clean water to its citizens.
And not in New Jersey where we pay such a high rate
Yes.
of taxes and expect appropriate services in return. Wynnie, let's hear you.
With Newark, let me go back a little
Please.
bit because, of course, the lead, it's a legacy issue. So we've had this issue back, before Ken Gibson, but, I think he had the opportunity also to do something about it. And then you move to Sharp James and then Booker and then now currently Mayor Baraka. And so in 1900, Newark went out and they bought 35,000 acres of the watershed. So it goes from Morris, Passaic, and Sussex County. So that's where the Newark and the Paquonic water system, that's the source of the water. So then there was the Newark Watershed Conservation Development, which was a nonprofit, and then they became in charge of the whole water system. And so there was a whole lot of corruption going on, and that's when us, the Newark Water Group, came in, and we exposed the whole corruption. And in terms of kickbacks, so instead of taking care of the water system, they were busy doing Lord knows what. And then so we exposed them, and then there was this report by a professor at Columbia who's also a member of the Newark Water Group called Hogwild. And then you can find it online. It's a really interesting paper. And then Booker, he failed to do something about it because he was too busy trying to privatize the water. And then it was handed off to Mayor Baraka. And interestingly enough, Baraka was with us during the Newark Water Group fight. And then Booker was also with us when he was fighting Sharp James, who wanted to privatize the water. And so in back of their mind, they knew how important the whole water issue is, because water is life. You cannot survive without water. And then so anybody who knows the history knows of lead. They've known this since like before 1943. What it can do to you in terms of your kidney functions, cognitive development. It could be fatal to the fetus. Also, pregnant mothers, and for adults, you can get kidney disease, cardio issues, and you can eventually die from the lead. So a whole host of issues. So they knew that. And so, 30 schools, after they went and inspected 30 schools, they found that they had high lead levels. And so the NRDC, Natural Resource Defense Council, and the Newark New Caucus, so Newark Education Workers Caucus, they decided to sue the city because of the high lead levels. And then so little by little, it was exposed. And then there was this grassroots organization, Newark Coalition, and they started to pressure the mayor. And so at the beginning, they stated that Newark's water is fine, does not have any lead. So a lot of people hearing that, they think, okay, everything's fine with the water. Now, the statement, at face value, it is true, because at the source, there isn't the water. But once it leaves the watershed, and then it goes to the water treatment, and it goes through the pipes, and then it gets into your home, and if you have the faucet that has lead, and if the anti-corrosion through the pipes, if that fails, well, guess what? You have lead. So,
And very good points there, Wynnie and Carl. Let's zero in on a few things. I don't trust the anti-corrosion agent. It sounds to me like we already have a problem with one contaminant, and you're deciding that the solution is let's pump your water full of another chemical, which we don't know if it has been properly studied because information isn't really out there.
well, the thing is, there is, because the chemistry, and I'm not a chemistry expert,
Right.
I'm not even a water expert. A lot of this, like through Carol, has been through research
Right.
and having to live it.
Which we have to
And
do on our own
you
because
have
it's
to
not
do-
out there. Go
Exactly.
ahead.
And so, the silicone phosphate or something, I forget the anti-corrosion agent,
Right.
they switched it to zinc orthophosphate.
Orthophosphate,
Now what
yeah.
it's supposed to do is supposed to make a sheath around the pipe, to build up the mineral deposits,
Right.
that protects the water from getting in contact with the pipes, with the lead pipes, so that you won't get lead. Now, if the pH level changes and it becomes more acidic, then it can become a carcinogenic. And then so you have to monitor.
In other
it.
words, Wynnie, do we
You
want that
have
in
to
us?
monitor- you do
I
not
want to
want
be
that
drinking
in
this?
us. No,
do I
you
want to
don't.
be cooking my food,
You
my wonderful Caribbean food
If it's carcinogenic,
from my
no.
wonderful Caribbean
Yeah.
family? Do I
Yeah.
want to be cooking with something carcinogenic,
No.
potentially carcinogenic, whatever it is? Do I even
Absolutely
want the taste of it in my
Absolutely
water?
not.
Tell me.
Which is why they have to monitor it. So that's why they keep changing it. So once it fails, right, then they have to monitor it and then play with the pH level so that it doesn't become too acidic. And so that's when, finally, once they
Wynnie,
finally...
we just learned the New Jersey DEP saying there was improper monitoring, there was improper self-regulation by Suez in even monitoring lead action levels. So we're going to trust them to even monitor the remediation by the use of orthophosphates in water. We're going to trust them to monitor whether it's at the appropriate pH level. Tell me.
And that's where you can come in, so you have to do your due diligence. So you have to go and you have to, hold them accountable. And then you also have to take the proper precautions yourself. So you have to get the proper water filters. So for instance, in terms of the contaminants, even when you take one sample, you could take the same sample from the same source, or well, rather a different sample from the same source, and it'll come out differently with different levels and, different contaminants also. So you have to go and make sure that you test the water yourself. Like for instance, my water in Newark, it has arsenic in it. So
And
I have-
hormones and
all
a
these
host of
other-
other
a
things
host of other
that we
things.
discovered, yes.
So you have to get the proper water filter that filters out arsenic, and in order.
Perfect.
to
Let's
use
get
it.
back to filter because Newark had a good you tested filters recently when over the whole blow up of lead. But before
Yeah.
we get there, just one thing, Carl. Is it fair for Suez to require homeowners to pay the cost of replacing lead pipes in their homes, meaning not the service lines, but the actual lead pipes that run from, let's say, the street
to their
into the
home.
homes? Because we don't know the answer to that yet. Who is going to pay for it, and is it fair, especially after, as Wynnie kind of highlighted, over years, you had the Lead Industries Association lobby that basically continued to push for the use of lead and downplaying the effects of lead on people, downplaying the fact that it was hazardous to our health. And so the government, who was complicit, encouraged the use of lead pipes, and know that it needs remediation. Who pays for it? Can we afford to change it ourselves? How do you see that working?
Well, it isn't fair. From what I understand, it is the homeowner's responsibility, in Teaneck anyway, I can't speak for any other town, to replace with their own money the pipes from the street leading into their home. Suez is only responsible at this point legally to replace the pipe from their main pipe coming from the reservoir to the sidewalk. So as soon as your sidewalk begins, as soon as your curb begins, that is your responsibility. And they're charging, they said it's a bargain. You only have to pay $1,000 to have that, but we'll do it, because we're such a kind-hearted
Oh, they're
company.
kind-hearted.
My goodness.
Just like they monitor the water we
Yes.
get. We trust them.
Yeah, they should do like Newark.
Wynnie, tell us how filters worked in Newark, because I know what happened is in the initial stages of the crisis, they tried giving out certain types of filters to homeowners, but that did not work. And because of that, it's a good and a bad. We're happy it didn't work, even though we sympathize and empathize with homeowners and children and families affected. But that really highlighted the fact that there is no way around getting rid of the pipes. So tell us about filters and what you recommend for filters based on that experience.
Well, basically, the filters that they gave out were pure filters. And so they did a small sampling, not enough, not nearly enough. But what they found was that people were using them incorrectly. So they were letting hot water run through the filter, or they had it set up wrong. But then I think the mayor and the Newark's People's Assembly, and they go out and, they try to inform the community and, inform them about all sorts of different topics. And so they found that, the people were using them incorrectly, and then they went again, I guess they taught them how to use it. And then, after a while, they found out, yes, that they were effective, that, they're supposed to remove 99.9% of lead.
Oh, so they do?
Yes.
These are the regular pure filters.
Pure water filters that
These are the ones you can easily attach to your tap?
to your faucet.
Okay.
So if you have one of those fancy faucets, it's not going to work. And the other thing, too, is those fancy faucets, they tend to have lead, some of them also. So you have to be careful what kind of faucets that you buy. Make sure that it doesn't have lead in it.
Okay,
because your
perfect.
water could be fine, but then you run it through that fancy faucet, and then it has lead, and then lo and behold, you also.
But you would recommend, certainly as a short-term measure, self-help measure, that we do get at least a
Yes.
quality pure filter and attach to
until
pipes.
everything is straightened out.
Is sorted out.
Exactly.
Let's zero in a little bit more on the effects of lead, because I think one of the reasons why this problem has persisted for years is because the effects of lead have been downplayed. And every time I think of it, and and you mentioned some of them just now, Wynnie, I can't get over a number of things. One is there seems to have been some complicity among health authorities, the government, Lead Industries Association, water providers, to focus on the effects on children only. And that's bad enough.
Yes.
Right? And of course they throw in pregnant mothers when they're ready.
Yeah.
But then they totally downplayed some of the things you just mentioned, the effects on adults, the effects on bodily organs, the fact that lead, once it gets in, it does not come out. So it builds up over time, right? And then we think of the effect and the impact on our society, because let's start with children. And we get why they're more vulnerable, because your systems, your organs are just developing. Your nervous system is more vulnerable, etc. Brain damage, cognitive function, leads to learning disabilities,
Lower IQ.
And those in themselves have other consequential damages: social maladjustment, antisocial behavior, propensity to crime. And we know about the prison pipeline,
Yeah.
especially for minorities,
Yes.
right? In our first fresh report, we spoke about the fact that, the Lead Industries Association, we have learned, and a lot of the scientists who work for those lobby groups, for years, they made parents feel like they were bad parents. So, your child has a learning disability
Yeah.
and is tested by some skewed IQ testing method as having low IQ, it's because you don't know how to raise your child.
Or even race, with the
Or-
IQ.
thank you.
Yeah.
Or it's a race
It's a
issue.
race issue.
So don't look at lead in water. Don't look at contaminants in your water. Don't look at chemicals that should not be in your system at all. More so the ones that go in and never come out. It's about your bad parenting style. Right? And because of that, we were distracted for years, and I find that we drank that Kool-Aid because we moved on. We accepted it. Granted, we may not have wherewithal to fight all these big fights. We're up against it. But I think we needed to keep the conversation going, which is to say, it's not necessarily bad parenting. Because I tried all the stuff you told me to do in the how-to books you gave me. I did everything you said. I brought the kid to church. Or whatever the recommended thing is. Do we need to go refocus on the lies that have been told for years about the effects of lead on human beings and the impact it likely has had on the society in terms of crime, the effects of learning disabilities, the effect of so-called low IQs that are really not based on any natural factors but are really environmental? What do you think?
Well, in terms, I think now they have to find ways to help these kids who have been affected by lead in terms of special education and, treatment, because it's not I guess, in a popular science in terms of chelation therapy, because a lot of people are saying that, well, we're not too sure about it, they're on the fence in terms of the different drugs that remove lead from the system, And so a lot of the parents who are at low socioeconomic levels, they may not have access to those types of treatments for their children. And so there has been studies done also in terms of the IQ levels, right, in terms of lead, where in affluent communities, kids that were exposed to lead, their IQ points also went down. Whereas the kids, in the minority, low-income neighborhoods who were not exposed to lead, nothing happened to their IQ. So right off the bat, we know it's not a race or socioeconomic issue.
Or a bad
It's- or
parenting,
a
bad parenting
parenting
issue. Right.
And so, we have to have legislation, we have to take into consideration, and there is a dialogue that has to happen.
Or maybe we should explore what Carol started exploring, which is how to hold somebody accountable and to take steps ourselves. Now, Carol, I know after you discovered that within your whole household, the whole the cancer cases,
Yes.
that you started exploring, one, how you could hold somebody accountable. Not just for the fact that cancer existed in your household, because you're going to have a heck of a time proving cause and effect.
Right.
But we're not interested in necessarily just cause and effect. We're interested in accountability, information that we should have had, truth that should have been put out there, and how we can hold you accountable for that negligence. Tell us what you think about that and about how we can approach this whole issue of the downplaying of the negative effects of lead.
Well, I think, that knowledge sets you free in a sense, that
Yes.
the more information you have, then the better your position is in terms of addressing these issues. I came to this really as an absolute naive parent. I believed Suez when they said the water was clean. I used a Brita filter, which doesn't filter anything, or mostly, is really not certainly meant to be used for lead and arsenic. And I will then inform you of other chemicals that are in the water, that were found in my water, that are also carcinogens.
This has been the Fresh Report, and we're happy we got the chance to come into your living rooms, come on your computer screens, and tell you about the work we're doing with lead. Join us again when we explore more issues concerning lead and how we're going to solve it in New Jersey and the United States. Wynnie, Carl, thank you so much. Looking forward to seeing you again.
Pleasure.
Same time, same place.
Absolutely.
You got it.
Love it.